the Pioneer viewers, how are you doing? Today we will again bring you the developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine war. As you know, since the beginning of the war, the Ukrainian armed forces have destroyed targets belonging to the Russian army many times using HIMARS missiles produced by the United States, not only on the front line, that is, on the conflict areas, but also in the remaining parts of the front line. Many points far from the front line, including Berdyansk, Mariupol, and the Crimean peninsula, have been repeatedly hit by the Ukrainian army. However, in recent days, the Ukrainian armed forces have again carried out a successful operation. Using HIMARS missiles, the Ukrainian armed forces hit a very critical target belonging to the Russian army. In our map report, we also mentioned the attacks on the Donetsk. Let's look at the details of the attacks carried out by the Ukrainian armed forces. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring the Russia-Ukraine war to your screens. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so as not to miss our daily map reports and reports on the agenda. I also read all your comments on our videos. Thank you all for your nice comments. Please continue to express your opinions in the comments. Let's start if you are ready. The Pioneer reports. As you know, there have been Russian attacks on the Donetsk front line for about 2 months. As we have stated many times before, there are of course Russian gains in these attacks, but the Russian army has sacrificed a lot of equipment and soldiers even to achieve these small gains. What is needed for the attacks on the front line to continue? Of course, there is a need of constant reinforcements of the Russian troops conducting attacks on the front line. These reinforcements come from the Russian Federation, but of course, these reinforcements need to be stored somewhere. And the reinforcements should be stored at the points closest to the front line, that is, to the battlefield. Let's think about like it. Let's mark the Donetsk front line here based on the Donetsk city center. That is, let's draw a line from the direction of Stromylikhivka in the direction of Bryukov on the Russian border. As you can see, this line is about 167 kilometers long. In other words, if the Russian army chooses to send reinforcements from this region, it will have to cover this distance every time. However, the Russian army will have to move the reinforcements to the points close to the front line. In this way, the needs of the Russian army can be seen more quickly and easily. However, this brings with the other dangers. Since the beginning of the war, the Ukrainian army has repeatedly destroyed ammunition depots, petrol depots, and many other strategic Russian targets with critical strikes. The Russian army also has many weapons and ammunition depots around the city center of the Donetsk. The HIMARS attacks carried out by the Ukrainian army in the past days was aimed at one of these warehouses. According to the information we obtained from local sources, the Russian army was about to launch an attack attempt against the Ukrainian positions in Avdiivka and neighborhoods. We can even say that it had already started. In other words, the front line was quite active. However, the Russian attacks was suddenly shaken by the big news. More accurately, it was more or less clear that this news would come, because while the Russian troops were attacking, the HIMARS missiles launched by the Ukrainian armed forces passed right over them and went in the direction of Donetsk. And where did the HIMARS missiles hit? As we have already mentioned, the Russian army is obligated to establish reinforcement points very close to the conflict line. Some of these were located in the Donetsk city center. The HIMARS missiles launched by the Ukrainian armed forces hit warehouses used by the Russian army with a great noise. According to local sources, this warehouse was on paper the warehouse of a petrol station. However, the warehouse was probably used to meet the petrol needs of the Russian army. It is also alleged that one of the ammunition depots of the Russian army was destroyed by the HIMARS attacks of the Ukrainian armed forces. When we look at the reports of the local residents in the region, we see that the sound of the violent attacks was heard from many points. From this point of view, the probability that the ammunition depot was destroyed is quite high. The sound of the explosions during the heating of the petrol depot may not spread over the wide area. However, it seems very likely that the attacks on the ammunition depot was heard over a very wide area. These attacks are of a very critical nature because, as we have just mentioned, the Donetsk front line is one of the most intense areas of conflicts. The Russian army is constantly under attacks at some points. Therefore, the Russian army is constantly spending ammunition, Russian vehicles, and constantly consuming petrol. We can say that if such attacks increase, the Russian army will slow down the pace of its attacks. We have also mentioned the small but effective attacks strategy of the Ukrainian army. This strategy needs to continue. If this strategy is maintained, the Russian army will slow down even more. This may allow the Ukrainian armed forces to find an opportunity to advance. One of the moving points of the front line is the Kherson front line. As you know, the Kherson front line, which remained quite calm during 3 months' Ukrainian counteroffensive, has become quite active in the last 2 months. Especially with the Ukrainian armed forces moving to the eastern bank of the Dnieper River, the situation that has emerged brings great problems for the Russian army. The ultimate goal of the Ukrainian army here is to create a line through which they can advance to the Crimean peninsula. Of course, this requires both the collapse of the Russian defense on the front line and the destruction of the points supporting the front line of the Russian army. Allegedly, in the coming days, the Ukrainian armed forces will launch an offensive against a number of targets both on the Crimean peninsula and in occupied southern Ukraine. These targets are allegedly ammunition depots, petrol depots, command centers, and airports hosting Russian aircraft. So this is an inferior based on the analysis by the international organizations. However, the developments in the region also confirms this. According to the allegations, the Russian army transferred a large number of aircraft from the Kherson region, which has been subjected to Ukrainian attacks in recent days, to the east of the Crimean peninsula. According to the allegations, the helicopters and the airplanes at Chapolinka airport were transferred to a specially constructed area in Arabat Split. Satellite images also showed that a facility is being built in this area. In other words, we can say that the recent attacks have forced the Russian army to take new measures on the Kherson front line. If the Ukrainian armed forces carry out attacks mentioned in the coming days, we will see that the fear of the Russian army is justified. However, if these attacks do not take place, we can say that the Russian army is only afraid of the possibility of an attack by the Ukrainian army. What do you think? How will the front line be shaped if the Ukrainian army has more HIMARS missiles? Do you think the Russian army can compensate for its losses? Do you think the Ukrainian army will carry out a large-scale offensive as claimed? Let me know in the comments. I read and care about all your comments.